Now, Angela, you've written a great piece for the Daily Telegraph about how Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, now have one option: to voluntarily renounce their royal titles. You write, quote, "Foregoing the titles is an act of renewal, a gesture."
For years, Princess Eugenie has been one of the quieter figures in the royal family. She does not chase attention, she rarely gives interviews, and she tends to operate just outside the spotlight. But now, someone who worked inside the royal household has spoken out, offering a rare account of what Eugenie is really like when the cameras are gone and the palace doors are closed. And the timing of that account matters. It comes as Eugenie and her sister Beatrice are navigating one of the most difficult periods of their adult lives, with renewed scrutiny surrounding their father, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, and growing public curiosity about how his daughters behave behind the scenes. So what is Princess Eugenie actually like in private, according to someone who dealt with her face-to-face over many years? And does that version match the assumptions people have made about her based on headlines alone?
Now, what about Princess Beatrice and Eugenie? They've, of course, fled the UK and are reportedly barely holding it together, Josh.
Yes, that's right. Both of them have fled the UK. Princess Beatrice, I think she's been spotted with a business economic initiative in Saudi Arabia.
Well, first, I think, to really understand why this behind-closed-doors account has landed with such impact, you have to look at what has been happening around Eugenie publicly. Over the past several months, as attention once again returned to Andrew's links with Jeffrey Epstein, Eugenie and Beatrice made a noticeable shift in how visible they were. They did not disappear, but they did step back from certain high-profile public engagements. In October, both sisters were expected to attend a charity event at the British Museum, attended by celebrities and members of the aristocracy. Neither appeared. Their absence was immediately noticed, especially given the timing. This came as renewed scrutiny focused on Andrew, who is no longer a working royal and no longer uses his Duke of York title. As coverage intensified, he released a statement saying the continued accusations against him were distracting from the work of the king and the wider royal family.
So, and actually Princess Beatrice has been smiling for the pictures. Of course, both Beatrice and Eugenie will both actually carry on. They will still hold both their princess titles and their York titles as well.
He again denied the allegations made against him. The pressure did not stop there. Andrew's former wife, Sarah Ferguson, was also pulled back into the headlines, with reports revisiting her past financial dealings and shady behaviour. For their daughters, it meant once again watching their parents' history dominate public discussion. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams described this as a deeply painful period for Beatrice and Eugenie. He noted that any hopes they might have had of moving into more senior or visible roles within the royal family had effectively disappeared. And yet, even during this period, Eugenie did not retreat entirely. She has continued to live her life in public view, just far more selectively. She has attended private family occasions, including a recent christening, choosing intimate settings over large public events. It was a reminder that stepping back is not the same as hiding. It is against this backdrop that the comments from Grant Harold stand out. Harold served as a butler to King Charles between 2004 and 2011, back when Charles was still Prince of Wales. During that time, he regularly encountered Beatrice and Eugenie as young members of the royal household. According to Harold, what struck him most about Eugenie was her manner with staff. He described her as kind and gentle, someone who consistently treated people with respect. He said both sisters were always polite, always used their please and thank yous, and were genuinely pleasant to deal with. Speaking on behalf of OLBG, Harold said the sisters were extremely lovely young women and were well liked within the household.
So actually they're very different from Prince Andrew and of course his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who is understood now. I originally predicted that she would stay with Prince Andrew. Now she's reportedly been telling sources close to her and friends.
Importantly, he was not describing formal walkabouts or staged occasions. He was talking about day-to-day interactions, corridors, small conversations, moments when no one was watching. And this is not the first time similar comments have surfaced. Other former palace staff have previously described Eugenie as one of the more approachable younger royals. Unlike some members of the family who were said to keep a clear distance from staff, Eugenie was often described as someone who remembered names, acknowledged people in passing, and made a point of engaging, even briefly. That reputation stands in contrast to how she is sometimes portrayed in the press. Eugenie has long been framed as overly privileged or naive, a narrative that hardened after a series of high-profile moments. Her wedding in 2018, for example, attracted attention not just for the grandeur, but for the guest list, which included figures some felt were controversial. Others pointed to her outspoken defense of her father in the past as evidence of poor judgment.
She's making alternative arrangements. I think when Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were living in that 30-room, that expansive royal lodge residence on the Grand Windsor estate.
There were also raised eyebrows over her closeness to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle during the early years of their relationship with the royal family. Eugenie was widely seen as one of the last bridges between Harry and the rest of the family after their departure, attending private dinners and reportedly keeping lines of communication open when others would not. Some royal watchers viewed that as loyalty. Others saw it as misplaced allegiance. Palace sources at the time suggested Eugenie often struggled to reconcile family loyalty with public expectation. She was said to be deeply protective of those close to her, sometimes to her own detriment. One insider described her as emotionally driven rather than strategic, someone who leads with feeling rather than calculation. That emotional loyalty may also explain why staff accounts of her behaviour are often warmer than media portrayals. People who lead with emotion tend to treat those around them as people rather than positions. Eugenie's professional life has also added another layer to how she is perceived. Unlike many royals, she has held a full-time role outside royal duties, working in the art world.
You know, they had separate areas. There was enough space to keep their distance. Now, with Prince Andrew probably going to be moving into a much smaller, probably more sparse accommodation on the Sandringham estate.
Colleagues in that space have described her as committed and low-key, someone who does not rely on her title day to day. That has helped her maintain a sense of normality, but it has also meant she does not fit neatly into traditional royal categories. She is neither fully royal nor fully private, and that ambiguity has often left her exposed. Her living arrangements reflect that same in-between status. Ivy Cottage, where she lives with Jack Brooksbank, is modest by royal standards and deliberately discreet. Friends have described her home life as domestic and grounded, far removed from palace pomp. Beatrice's life in the Cotswolds mirrors that shift. Both sisters appear to have made a conscious decision to prioritise stability over status, especially as the fallout from their father's actions continues to ripple outward.
That signals integrity and public accountability. It would be seen as a mature, front-footed, family soldiering act that shows self-awareness and respect for both the King and William's preference for a smaller royal family.
Still, criticism has not disappeared. One palace insider speaking to the Daily Mail painted a less flattering picture, suggesting the sisters grew up in an environment where everyday responsibilities were often handled for them. The source referenced Beatrice leaving her car unlocked with the keys inside, an incident that ended in theft, as an example of how insulated their upbringing had been. That same insider questioned whether the narrative that Beatrice and Eugenie chose careers over royal duties was entirely accurate, or whether it was a necessary reframing at a time when Andrew's standing was rapidly declining. And that question continues to hang over Eugenie today. How much of her life has been shaped by choice, and how much by circumstance?
That separation, even though that they've been living together since their divorce, it's going to be a very different existence. But Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, you know, it must be so tough for them.
What makes Grant Harold's account so compelling is that it cuts through all of that. It does not try to rehabilitate her image or excuse her family. because I think most of us would agree their behaviour is inexcusable. But it does describe how she behaved when status was irrelevant. Staff often notice things the public never does. Tone of voice, eye contact, whether someone acknowledges you or walks past as though you are invisible. Those details do not make headlines, but they form reputations inside palace walls. Despite everything surrounding her family, Eugenie has continued to show up where it matters to her. She has attended family milestones. She has maintained relationships quietly. She has avoided dramatic gestures or public statements, even when provoked. For long-time royal watchers, that consistency is telling.
Yes, this is in no way connected to the fact they are not complicit in what happened with their father and mother about those lies. Why I'm suggesting it now is this is an ideal opportunity.
It suggests someone who understands the cost of attention and chooses restraint. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she knows saying less can sometimes say more. So I want to leave you with this question. When multiple people who worked inside the royal system describe Princess Eugenie as kind, polite, and emotionally genuine behind closed doors, does that change how you see her, even knowing the privilege, the missteps, and the controversies that surround her family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more royal stories that go beyond the headlines and into what really happens behind palace doors, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next one. Thanks for watching.